Shall we? Yeah. So, Hare Krishna, everyone. We are now connected on Facebook and we are connected on YouTube as well. And welcome to the School of Vedic Studies, which is like a structured study of Shastra. And our co-directors, Rasa Krida Parayan Prabhu is in Muscat and Tapan Mishra Prabhu in Kuwait and Mayapur together. And on behalf of all of them, we welcome His Holiness Bhakti Bringa Govinda Swami Maharaj. And Guru Maharaj is known to all of us here who have been in Dubai for a long time. And Maharaj has been serving Srila Prabhupada for the last 50 years now. And he has had various responsibilities that he has taken to serve Srila Prabhupada as an important member of the governing body commission of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And Maharaj, besides being an excellent preacher, he's known all over the world for his kirtans. People love him as the most approachable Swami, and he is known for his kirtans. He is known for his love for Vrindavan, and as Krishna has designed it, during this period of lockdown, Maharaj is locked down in the holy Vrindavan Dham, from where he has been giving classes practically every day on Chaitanya Bhagavat and also doing kirtans constantly and enlivening many devotees all over the world, giving Krishna Katha and doing Krishna Kirtan. So we extend a very warm welcome to him on behalf of School of Vedic Studies. And you all know that we have just completed a 4-week session with Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, who talked on Nectar of Instruction. So in the fitness of things, after discussing Nectar of Instructions, it's natural for us to know about the author of Nectar of Instruction, who is Srila Rupa Goswami, who is also the most important acharya in one sense in the parampara that we are following. So therefore, we requested Maharaj to speak on Srila Rupa Goswami, and for which he has kindly agreed. So thank you very much, Maharaj, for giving your association. And without much ado, I request Maharaj to give us his words of wisdom on the topic of the day, Srila Rupa Goswami. Thank you very much and welcome everyone. Sit off. Yeah. We are unable to hear you, Guru Maharaj.
Like this. Hare Krishna. Should you plug this into the computer somewhere? Hare Krishna, can you hear me now? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hello, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, for some reason, the audio is not coming through from your side, Guru Maharaj.
We are working on it.
Yes, we can. Pardon?
The message came, yes, we can.
Krishna Sarup says that he can hear.
And this icon shows that sound is there. Even white when I speak, it shows it is.
Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Hear very well.
Okay, so connect to.
Jugal people are saying that they can hear very well.
So if everyone can hear, we can start now.
So can everybody hear?
Yeah, we actually can hear you.
Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to be participating in your program in the School of Vedic. I'm not sure what the last word is, but it's a pleasure to be here with you. Jugal Kishore kindly introduced me, and he so rightly said that during the lockdown, by the grace of Radhe Shyam, I've been able to be here in Sri Vrindavan Dham, which is my home. So we're very happy to be here with you all. We'll speak a little bit about Rupa Goswami this evening, although the topic of Rupa Goswami is very, very big. And before we speak about Rupa Goswami, we will have kirtan. And I would like for everybody to join the kirtan. I will be singing, and I don't think that I will be able to hear you responding, but I will have faith that everybody is chanting. And off screen, I have Yogi and Ananda to help me out. So we'll chant for a few minutes and then we'll discuss Rupa Goswami. Hare Krishna. Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschachare Zitarine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschachare Zitarine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh
Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari
Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari
Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Radhe Shyam. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jayo Jayo Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Jayo Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. So once again, thank you for inviting me to participate in your program tonight and to speak for a few minutes on Sri Rupa Goswami. You are all well aware that more or less 500 years ago, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the golden avatar of Krishna, appeared in this world for the purpose of delivering the Yuga Dharma, which is the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stayed in this world for 48 years. 24 of those years he passed in his home in Navadvip, and then at the tender age of 24, he accepted sannyas and traveled through India for a number of years, and then made his residence Jagannath Puri. And Lord Chaitanya had his chief disciples who assisted him in the spreading of Krishna consciousness. I should say not only in the spreading of Krishna consciousness, but establishing the theology of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas and presenting the doctrine of the Gaudiya philosophy. His chief disciples were known as the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, and the 2 leaders of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan were Sri Rupa Goswami and Sri Sanatana Goswami. So we'll speak a bit tonight about Rupa Goswami. We'll speak about his meeting with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and a bit about his life in Vrindavan. I'm not sure how much we can cover in the time that we have tonight, but we will try. Rupa and Sanatan, they came from a family of Brahmins who originally hailed from Karnataka. And their forefathers migrated from Karnataka to East Bengal. At that time, it was all Bengal because it was all India, and they lived in an area in a city which is Jashore. I've been to Jashore before, and I've been to the place where Rup and Sanatan's family resided. It's not far from Mayapur. If you cross the India-Bangladeshi border, going from Mayapur, and then you drive for another, 2 hours, something like that, you come to Jashore. There's a beautiful ISKCON center. Excuse me for a moment, folks. I have to. Yes. There's a beautiful ISKCON center there now at the Rup Sanatan Tirtha. So they lived there, and at some point in their lives, when they were young, they received education from the great logician Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. They learned logic from him, and they also studied Sanskrit, Persian language, and Arabic language. After their father passed away, and because of their profound culture and their scholarship and their erudition, they were pushed towards engagement in the government of Nawab Hussain Shah. I guess before I go further, I should say that Rupa Goswami was born in 1489, and he left this world in 1564. And he was born in Jashore, and he gave up his body here in Vrindavan, and his samadhi is at the Radha Damodar Mandir here in Vrindavan. So Rupa Goswami, when he passed away, he lived for 75 years, many of those years in Vrindavan. So again, back to the fact that they were so learned, and they were so cultured, and they were just such intelligent personalities. They were pushed towards the service of the king of Bengal at that time, and his name was Nawab Hussain Shah. So from Jashore, they migrated to the west to a place which is called Ramakeli, which was the seat of the kingdom of Goda. Now this Ramakeli is about, I went there a long time ago. I think it's about 2 or 3 hour bus ride, just straight north from Mayapur. Now that area is near a city which is called Malda. And they lived there, and they engaged in service to Hussain Shah. Because they accepted the service of the Shah, they were basically excommunicated from the Brahminical culture. And they even accepted names according to the positions. which they had in the service of Hussein Shah. Rupa Goswami, he became the prime minister, and his name was Dabir Khas. And Sanatan Goswami, he was in charge of the treasury, and his name was Shakar Malik. So they served there, and at this time Lord Chaitanya had accepted sannyas, and he traveled through India for 6 years, and then he came back to Navadvip. And Lord Chaitanya's glories were really spreading like wildfire, because he was so mercifully and munificently blessing everybody with Krishna Prema, or love for God, which is our goal of life. Chaitanya Charitamrita explains that Lord Chaitanya would travel, and when he would travel, he would always have his arms upraised, chanting and dancing. And any of the people along the travels who saw Mahaprabhu chanting and dancing, they would immediately become pure devotees of Krishna. And then those people, they would return to their villages, and when they would chant and dance in the way that they had seen Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chant and dance, all the people in their villages, they would become pure devotees also. And Lord Chaitanya, he would empower individuals with the Shakti to spread Krishna consciousness. So his reputation was really, really spreading. And these two brothers, Rupa or Dabir Khas and Shakar Malik, they had heard of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they became very interested to meet this person. So Lord Chaitanya had a desire, and that desire was to travel to Vrindavan. And so he left Navadvip with that intention, and he started heading north. And heading north, he came to Ramakeli, where Rupa and Sanatan stayed. Now, because Lord Chaitanya had become so phenomenally popular, he was accompanied by thousands and thousands of people. There was a huge crowd every place he went, and everybody was always chanting the holy names, and everybody was always dancing in ecstasy. And when he came with this big crowd to the place of the hometown of the Nawab Hussein Shah, people started becoming worried. And Hussein Shah, he became very curious. Who is this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? And he was, Hussein Shah on his own, he was thinking, who is this person? I think that he must be a great prophet, because he's traveling and he's not giving charity to people and he's not paying people, but all of these people are following him and they're all so happy. And Hussein Shah, he had one of his secretaries, his name was Keshava Chatri. And Keshava Chatri was very worried for Lord Chaitanya. And when Hussein Shah asked Keshava Chatri, who is this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Keshava Chatri replied, oh, he's just a beggar sannyasi. He's just a mendicant, nobody to worry about. And when Hussein Shah heard that, he said, really? But from my observation, I considered that he was a great prophet. So they just wanted to make Hussein Shah peaceful. And then Hussein Shah himself went to Dabir Khas, or Rupa Goswami, and he said, who is this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? And Rupa Goswami, he looked at him and he basically, he replied by saying, you should know who he is. Because in all Shastra, it's explained that the king or the ruler is the representative of God. So by your own mind, being empowered by God, you should know who he is. And this way, Rupa Goswami very nicely told Hussein Shah, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Hussein Shah was pacified. And Rupa Goswami and Sanatan decided that they had to go and they had to meet Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So late one evening, in the middle of the night, they went to meet the Lord. But they didn't go in their royal dress that they were accustomed to wearing. They took very, very simple cloth of the Vaishnavas, just some lungi and some chadar, and they covered their heads, and they went to where they heard Lord Chaitanya was staying. And when they reached there, first they were seen by Nityananda and Haridas, and they were so satisfied. And they said, please come, we will take you to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when they approached Lord Chaitanya, it was a very, it was a very moving scene. It was a very emotional scene, because these two brothers, the prime minister and the person in charge of the treasury, such high positions in the material society, they simply fell down on the ground. And they took straw and they put straw between their teeth, like they were animals. And they took the chadar that they had covered themselves, and they tied the chadar around their neck, and they were holding the end out. The Lord Chaitanya, you please take us. We are your animals. And then they spoke very moving words to Lord Chaitanya. And they were really opening their hearts and truly begging for the mercy of Mahaprabhu. And this should really be the way that all of us should be when we're approaching spiritual authorities and we're approaching the Lord. We should really approach with the spirit of dainya, or Vaishnav humility. And we should understand our position and the great position of the Lord. So I will take just a few minutes to read from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita on this section. It's very beautiful. Here it says the two brothers, they saw the Lord and they fell down, they put the straw in their mouths, and they tied cloth around their neck, and then they began to cry. And they just began to cry and cry and cry. And Lord Chaitanya looked at them and said, no, please get up. And Lord Chaitanya was trying to assure them that everything was okay. But so the two brothers, they got up and they kept the straw within their teeth, and they folded their hands and they began offering prayers. So this is how they addressed Lord Chaitanya upon their first meeting with Mahaprabhu. They said, all glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the merciful Savior of all fallen souls. All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then they looked at Lord Chaitanya and they said, Sir, we belong to the lowest class of men. our associates, and our employment is of the lowest variety as well. Therefore, we cannot really introduce ourselves to you. In fact, we feel so ashamed just standing here in front of you. On that point, Rupa Goswami has written a verse. Rupa Goswami wrote many verses. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada says Rupa Goswami compiled at least 100,000 Sanskrit verses. And this one verse, it follows the point that they just made here, where Rupa Goswami says, "O Lord, I have been born in a low family. And Lord, I've kept bad association. And Lord, I've engaged in all sinful activity." He says, essentially, if I were to express how many bad things I've done, I would be so ashamed. But then he says, but, O Gopi Janabalabha, I have heard that you are merciful to those who are most fallen. And therefore, despite being in such a fallen condition, that is giving great joy to my heart. So here, the two brothers, they said, "Dear Lord, please let us inform you that there is no one who is more sinful than we are, nor is there any person who has committed as many offenses as we have committed." And here they say, if we wanted to mention all the sinful things that we have done, we would have to leave this place immediately. You know, and they said, and what to speak of having the desire to give them up? And then the two brothers said, but Lord, you have incarnated to deliver the fallen souls. So therefore, you should consider that really, in this entire world, there is no one who is more fallen than we are. And then they go on to speak to the Lord. They said, you delivered Jagai and Madai. And they were so sinful. But then they come back to the point and they say, but we are more sinful than they are. They said, we are millions of times more sinful than Jagai and Madai. We are more degraded, fallen, and such terrible persons. And then it said, the two brothers, Dabir Kas and Shakar Malik, very humbly submitted that due to their abominable activities, they were bound by the neck and hands and had been thrown into a ditch of very abominable things just to engage in sense gratification. So then they continue and they say, if you simply deliver us by your transcendental strength, then certainly your name will be known as Patita Pavan, the savior of all fallen souls. And they keep this up for some time. And finally, Lord Chaitanya, he replies to them. And he says, my dear Dabir Kas, you two brothers are my very old servants. My dear Shakar Malik, from this day, your names will be changed. I will give you the names Srila Rupa and Srila Sanatan. Now, I'm humbly begging you, abandon this humility, because to see you in such a humble state It is breaking my heart. So they approached the Lord with great humility. Despite being in such an exalted material position, and because of their true humility, the Lord accepted them. He said, yes, you're my very, very old servants, and I will accept you, and I will initiate you, and I will change your names. And then Lord Chaitanya, he reflected, and he said, actually, you have written me many letters, and I have read your letters, and by your letters, I could understand your heart. And Lord Chaitanya said, and to teach you, I sent you one reply to your letters. He said, I sent you one verse in reply to the many letters that you sent to me. And this is the letter that Mahaprabhu sent, or the verse that Mahaprabhu sent to Sri Rupa and Sri Sanatana. He said, if a woman is attached to a man other than her husband, she will appear very busy in carrying out her household duties, but within her heart, she is always relishing feelings of association with her paramour. So essentially, Lord Chaitanya, he told them, he said, I am your goal. Krishna is your goal. But externally, you should continue performing all your activities with diligence. But within your heart, the only thing that you should meditate on is, again, being reunited with your lover, or being reunited with the Supreme. Then Lord Chaitanya smiled at the two brothers and he said, actually, I had no business in coming here. He said, but I've come here only for the reason to meet you two brothers. Everybody is asking me, why did I come to Ramakeli? And no one knows what my real intentions are. He said, it is good that you two brothers have come to meet me. He said, now go home. He said, do not fear anything. Birth after birth, you have been my eternal servants, and I am sure that very soon Krishna will deliver you. So then something very nice happened after the Lord assured them. And Lord Chaitanya, he took his two hands and he put on the heads of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. And when they did that, then immediately they just fell down to the ground, and Rupa and Sanatan, they each took their head and put on the feet of Lord Chaitanya. After this, the Lord embraced Rupa and Sanatan, and he requested all the devotees who were present there with him, please give these two brothers your mercy. And so then, after begging permission from all the Vaishnavas present, the two brothers, they left and they went home. But before they went home, they looked at the Lord and they said, dear Lord, please understand something. The king of Bengal, Hussein Shah, actually, he's appearing not to be bothered by your presence here. They said, but nonetheless, he is a politician, and you can never tell if his mind will change quickly. So therefore, we're requesting you, please leave this place as soon as possible. And the Lord said, yes, I will do that. Because his intention was to go to Vrindavan. But then these two brothers, they looked at the Lord again and they said, and we have something else to request. And Lord Chaitanya said, what is that? And they said, you plan to go to Vrindavan, but you're going with such an army of people. They said, this is not the proper way to go to Vrindavan. They said, you should go to Vrindavan alone. And when they received that, when Lord Chaitanya heard that instruction from the two brothers, then he just said, yes. He said, I follow your instruction. And then he returned to Navadvip. So that was their first meeting. And Lord Chaitanya gave them an instruction. And he repeated that instruction later. He said, I want you brothers to go to Vrindavan. And when you go to Vrindavan, I want you to excavate the sites where Krishna had performed his Leela. And he said, I want you to write books about the science of bhakti. And I want you to preach the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And I want you to install deities. So then the Lord left. And then they started making their plans to escape. And Rupa Goswami took his younger brother, Sri Balaba, and they immediately left. And Chaitanya Charitamrita explains that they took 2 boatloads full of riches that Rupa Goswami had accumulated. And they went back to Jeshore, where Rupa Goswami distributed it to Brahmins and families and so forth and so on. And then he left 10,000 gold coins in Ramakeli with the person to help Sanatan when Sanatan wanted to escape and come for the service of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Rupa Goswami and Sri Balaba, they first went to Jashore, and then they started traveling And they had their second meeting with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Prayag. And they met Lord Chaitanya there, and they heard that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had come to that place. And they went and they saw that Lord Chaitanya was traveling and he was performing Sankirtan, and thousands of people were in the crowd. And Rupa Goswami went and met him. And then Lord Chaitanya told Rupa Goswami, he said, actually, I don't like these crowds too much, and there's something that I want to tell you. So let's go to a lonely place. And then he took Rupa Goswami to a place called Dashashvamedha Ghat. And for 10 consecutive days, he instructed Rupa Goswami in the science of bhakti. He basically, in 10 days, he opened, or he unfolded the entire idea of Krishna consciousness in the way that he wanted it presented to Rupa. And it's a beautiful discussion, and you can read about that in Chaitanya Charitamrita, or you can read about it in teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya begins this discussion by saying there's millions of living entities, but there's only, a small portion of living entities that are in the human species of life. And of those who are in the human species of life, some are actual servants of God and some are not. And then he kept unfolding his idea until he cited one very important verse for Rupa. And that is Brahmande Brahmate Kona Bhagavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasadipai Bhakti Lata Pija, where he explains that by the grace of Krishna, one meets the spiritual master, and by the grace of the spiritual master, one will come to Krishna, and the spiritual master, by his grace, the seed of devotional service is planted within the heart. And then he says that once that seed of devotional service is planted within the heart of the living being, then the devotee has to become a gardener. And he has to water that seed of bhakti regularly with the process of hearing and chanting about Krishna. And not only does he have to water it carefully, but he has to make sure that weeds don't overcome the creeper of devotion. And those weeds are offenses and anarthas. So he explained, this analogy to Rupa Goswami. And he said that if the devotee carefully cultivates this seed of bhakti, then that creeper of devotion will grow from this world to the spiritual world and take shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna, and one will realize what is the goal of life. So they stayed there, and they had association with Lord Chaitanya. And then Lord Chaitanya left, and they left as well. They went to Vrindavan. And then later, I should say that Rupa, he reached Vrindavan they met Lord Chaitanya in 1514, and he and Sanatan reached Vrindavan in 1516, after 2 years. And they stayed there for some time, at least Rupa and Anupam. They stayed there for some time. And then Rupa wanted to go to Jagannath Puri to meet Lord Chaitanya there. And in Jagannath Puri, he had his third meeting with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he and Anupam began traveling. And Rupa was writing. And Rupa was considering to write a drama about the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan and in Dwarka. And on the way of their travels, they came to Bengal. And when they were in Bengal, Anupam passed away. So his travels became slowed down for some time, and then he continued on his own. And before he came to Puri, he stopped one evening in a village which is called Satyabhamapur. And that evening, a very, very beautiful woman came to him in his dream, and she said, "I know you are writing a drama, but you should not write in one book the pastimes of Vrindavan and the pastimes of Dwarka. You should keep that separate." And when he woke up in the morning, he was thinking, was that Satyabhama appearing in my dream and telling me that I should not do this? And then he continued and he reached Puri. And when he came to Puri, he met Haridas Thakur, and he resided with Haridas Thakur at Siddhabakul. And it's interesting that Haridas Thakur is the Namacharya, and Rupa Goswami is the Rasa Acharya. They're both great acharyas of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but because Haridas had been born in a Muslim family, and Rupa had been engaging in the service of Hussein Shah, they were both considered unfit to enter the Jagannath temple. So they resided at Siddhabakul. And Lord Chaitanya, he would go to the temple every morning, and after he would see the morning pujas, the first thing he would do is he would go to Siddha Bakul, and he would meet with Haridas Thakur and Rupa Goswami. And many wonderful pastimes took place when Rupa was living in Jagannath Puri. And essentially, Lord Chaitanya introduced him to the great Vaishnavas who had come to live with Lord Chaitanya in Puri. And Lord Chaitanya very nicely created circumstances among the Vaishnavas to reveal the greatness of Srila Rupa Goswami. It was a very nice thing that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did, because Rupa, when Lord Chaitanya went to Puri, so many Vaishnavas from different places, they came and they started joining him. You know, disciples of Madhavendra Puri, who were god brothers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's guru, Ishwar Puri, they came and they were living there. And so many great devotees had come. And so Rupa was sort of like the new boy or the new devotee. And Lord Chaitanya wanted to show how great a devotee and how confidential Rupa Goswami actually was. So different instances happened. They were observing the Rath Yatra, and it's explained that at Rath Yatra, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would always stand in front of the cart and he would always recite prayers that other people could not understand. But Rupa Goswami, he understood the meaning of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And after hearing Lord Chaitanya recite those prayers, the Rupa Goswami went back to Siddha Bakul, and he wrote in Sanskrit a corresponding verse to the mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he wrote those verses, and then Rupa Goswami, it was noon, and he wanted to go to the ocean and have his noon bath. And Lord Chaitanya came there when Rupa Goswami was not there. And he found the verse of Rupa Goswami that he had written. And Lord Chaitanya said, "How is it that he has understood my mind?" And when Rupa Goswami came back, he saw Lord Chaitanya, and he fell down flat to offer obeisances. And very lovingly, Lord Chaitanya came and he gave a slap to Rupa Goswami. And he said, "How is it that you understood my mind?" And then Lord Chaitanya, he turned to Swarup Damodar. He said, "Look at this verse." He said, "How is it that Rupa Goswami could have understood my mind?" And Swarup Damodar, he just folded his hands and he said, "Lord, there's only one way by which he could have understood your mind. And that is if you revealed your mind to him. Because this is the only way that a person can understand the mind of God, is if the Lord himself reveals his mind to others." And when Lord Chaitanya heard that, he said, "Yes." He said, "I met him and I met his brother in Ramakeli. And I could see that they were such wonderful Vaishnavas that I gave them my mercy. And I empowered this Rupa Goswami to preach the bhakti cult." Therefore, in Rupa Goswami's pranam mantra, it says, "Sri Chaitanya mano bishtum stapitam jena bhutale." That Rupa Goswami, Sri Chaitanya mano bishtam, he understood the mind of the Lord And because of that, he was able to establish the Krishna consciousness movement throughout the world. So therefore, we devotees who are Gaudiya Vaishnavas and we're followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, more importantly, we're Rupanuga Vaishnavas, which means we're the followers of Sri Rupa Goswami. So he stayed in Puri, and he stayed for 10 months. And for the 4 months, all the devotees from the Vaishnavas from Bengal, they came and they stayed during the rainy season and they observed Rath Yatra, and then the Lord sent them back. And then Rupa Goswami, he continued and he stayed there, I think, through maybe the next Holi or something to that effect, but he stayed for 10 full months. And I would like to read from Chaitanya Charitamrita a few passages of when he was there. And I mentioned how Lord Chaitanya, he would call the Vaishnavas together, and then he would get Rupa Goswami to recite his poetry. And so here in Antya Lila, chapter 1, it says, one day when Rupa Goswami was writing his book, his drama, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. And as soon as Haridas and Rupa Goswami saw the Lord was coming, they fell down and they offered obeisances to Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya, he embraced them both, and then he sat down. And, you know, the Lord looked at Rupa and he said, what kind of a book are you writing? And then he picked up the palm leaf that Rupa Goswami was writing on. And when he saw the writing of Rupa Goswami, Lord Chaitanya's mind became very pleased. And then Lord Chaitanya, he held up that writing and he said, the handwriting of Rupa Goswami is just like a beautiful line of pearls. And so Lord Chaitanya was reading what Rupa was writing, and then he read a verse that Rupa had written, and Lord Chaitanya became filled with ecstatic love. And I will read that verse to you. That verse says, Tunde Tandavani Ratim Bitanute Tundavali Labhyate Kama Kroda Kadambani Gatayate Kamar Badubhya Spriham Cheta Prangana Sangani Vijayate Sarvindriyan Kritim No Jane Janita Kriyadabir Amritai Krishneti Varnidvahi. So this is the verse that Rupa Goswami wrote that caused Lord Chaitanya to go into ecstasy. I do not know how much nectar the two syllables Krishna have produced. When the holy name of Krishna is chanted, it appears to dance within my mouth. We then desire many, many mouths. And when that name enters the holes of the ears, we desire millions of ears. And when the holy name dances in the courtyard of the heart, it conquers the activities of the mind, and therefore all of the senses become inert. The Lord Chaitanya, he felt that this was the most perfect description of the holy name of Krishna that he had ever heard. And again, it's a question. How much nectar have the two syllables Krishna produced? It says, when the holy name of Krishna is chanted, it appears to dance within my mouth. And then we desire many, many mouths. Not just one mouth or one tongue, but we desire to have millions of tongues that Krishna can dance on our tongues. And when that name enters the holes of the ears, then we desire to have many millions of ears. We know we read in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the young ladies of Vrindavan, they chastise the creator Brahma. And they say, what type of foolish creator are you, that you make eyes that blink and for a second we cannot see Krishna? And in the same way, we wish to have millions of tongues to chant the name of Krishna and millions of ears to hear the holy name of Krishna. And then he says, when the holy name dances in the courtyard of our heart, it conquers the activities of the mind and all of our senses become inert. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted this verse, Haridas Thakur, upon hearing the vibration, became jubilant and began dancing and praising its meanings. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced both Rupa and Haridas, and he left for the sea. So then Lord Chaitanya organized a meeting with Rupa Goswami and all the devotees, and then he invited Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Ramananda Roy, and he wanted to give them a test. So what he did was, in the presence of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Ramananda Roy, he began to praise the good qualities of Rupa Goswami. And so he started requesting Rupa to recite. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his personal devotees met Rupa Goswami and Haridas Thakur. The Lord sat down in an elevated place with all of his devotees. Rupa Goswami and Haridas Thakur sat at the foot of that elevated place. Although everybody was asking them to sit on the same level with the other associates, they would not do so. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered Rupa Goswami to read the verse that he had previously heard. But Rupa Goswami, because of his shyness, he would not read it and he remained silent. Now this is talking about the verse that Rupa Goswami Lord Chaitanya had seen that Rupa Goswami had written when Rupa Goswami had gone to the sea. So when Rupa wouldn't recite, then Swarup Damodar, he began to read. And the verse is this: my dear friend, now I have met my very old and dear friend Krishna at this field of Kurukshetra. I am the same Radharani, and now we are meeting together. It is very pleasant, but I would still like to go to the bank of the Jamuna, beneath the trees of the forest there. I wish to hear the vibration of his sweet flute playing the fifth note within that forest of Vrindavan. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Ramananda Roy, when they heard this verse, they just looked at Lord Chaitanya and they said, without your special mercy, without you opening your heart and showing your heart to Rupa Goswami, how could he have understood your mind? And he said, had you not previously bestowed your mercy on him, it would not be possible for him to express your internal feelings. And then he requested Rupa Goswami to recite that same verse to the devotees: how much nectar have the two syllables Krishna produced. And when he did that, all the devotees in the assembly, they went into ecstasy, and their minds were filled with bliss, and they were struck with wonder. And everybody agreed. We have never heard poetry like the poetry that has been written by Rupa Goswami. And then, another sequence begins where Ramananda Roy, who is also an author, this is an interesting thing, that the devotees who were surrounding Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they were great authors, they were great poets, they were great musicians, they were great kirtaniyas. They were all highly cultured and highly talented people. And Ramananda Roy, then he looked at Rupa Goswami and he started trying to induce Rupa Goswami to speak, but Rupa Goswami was silent. He was so humble in the assembly of the Vaishnavas. And so because he was an author, he started asking, what is this verse? What is that verse? What are these different verses? And then Rupa Goswami would respond. And every time Rupa would cite one of his verses, it was like all the devotees were, it would just take their breath away. And they were all bewildered by this transcendental potency of Sri Rupa Goswami. And then he began, describing verses from Vidagdha Madhava and Lalita Madhava, what he was writing. And I will just read a few of those verses. And we have to, oh my goodness, because we're running out of time. May the sweet sound of Lord Krishna's flute, his authorized messenger, be glorified, for it expertly releases Srimati Radharani from her shyness and attracts her to go to Krishna. My dear friend, who is this fearless young man? He is as bright as a lightning cloud, and he wanders in his pastimes like a maddened elephant. From where has he come to Vrindavan? Alas, by his restless movements and attractive glances, he is plundering the vault of my heart of the treasures of my patience. So that's a verse that he wrote, spoken by Srimati Radharani. And then from Lalita Madhava, he wrote, Srimati Radharani is the Ganga in which the elephant of my mind enjoys pastimes. She is the shining of the full autumn moon for the chakora bird of my eyes. She is the dazzling ornament, the bright and beautiful arrangement of stars on the border of the sky of my chest. Now today I have gained Srimati Radharani because of my highly elevated state of mind. When Ramananda Roy heard this, he looked at Lord Chaitanya and he began to praise Rupa Goswami as if he had thousands of mouths. And he said, Lord Chaitanya, this is not just poetry, but this is a continuous shower of transcendental nectar. And then he paused and he said, it's not just that it's transcendental nectar, but it is the essence of all ultimate realizations appearing in the form of poetry. And all the devotees who were listening to Rupa's poetry, they just became overwhelmed with spiritual bliss. And then Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he makes a very beautiful statement in this regard. And this statement is so nice because I think it's really a statement that we should think about while we're engaging in bhakti and performing all the different services that we perform for Krishna. He says, what is the use of a bowman's arrow or a poet's poetry if they penetrate the heart, but do not cause the head to spin. So in all of our endeavors in devotional service, we should always try to perform them with so much devotion and so much attention and loving devotion to Krishna that it penetrates the heart and causes the head to spin. And then Ramananda Roy, he explains, Lord Chaitanya, this Rupa Goswami is the object of your mercy. Without your mercy, it would be impossible for him to write. And so therefore, my assumption is that you have empowered Rupa Goswami's heart. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu smiled and he responded and he said, I met Rupa Goswami in Prayag, and there he attracted me and he satisfied me because of his qualities. And then Lord Chaitanya, he looked at all of his associates and he said, please bless this Rupa Goswami that he may continue to describe the glories of Sri Vrindavan Dham, which are full of emotional love for God. So then the devotees from Bengal, they left after that. And Rupa Goswami, he continued and he stayed on. And before he left, Lord Chaitanya said, now go to Vrindavan and stay there. He said, you may send here your elder brother, Sanatan Goswami. When you go to Vrindavan, remain there, preach transcendental literatures, and excavate the lost holy places. Establish the service of Lord Krishna and preach the mellows of Lord Krishna's devotional service, and I will meet you again. And then having said that, the Lord placed his feet on Rupa Goswami's head, and Rupa Goswami offered his obeisances to all the devotees, and he left for Vrindavan. So he returned to Vrindavan, and he stayed in Vrindavan for the rest of his life. And in Vrindavan, he led the perfect, renounced life of a sadhu. He minimized all material demands so that he could maximize his time in hearing the glories of Krishna and chanting Lord Krishna's holy names. He was joined here by Sanatan, and basically these two brothers, they lived beneath trees. Sometimes they stayed here in Vrindavan. Sometimes they stayed in Terkadamba. Srila Prabhupada said they would live under a different tree every night so that they would not become attached. Rupa Goswami wrote 100,000 Sanskrit verses. He wrote the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that explains the science of devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada has given us the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in the form of the Nectar of Devotion. Srila Prabhupada called it the law book of Krishna consciousness. And all the devotees should study the Nectar of Devotion. At the present time, I'm reading Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, translated by Banu Maharaj with commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Jiva Goswami. Yes, they lived here, chanting, writing, Srila Prabhupada would often quote Srinivasacharya, Nana Shastra Vicharanayaka Nipanoshad Dharma Sanstapako. They stayed here and they studied all the revealed scriptures, all the Vedic literatures, and they extracted the very essence of all the Vedas, which is bhakti to Krishna. And they wrote beautiful books. Rupa Goswami wrote Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He wrote Lalita Madhava, Vidagdha Madhava. He wrote so many beautiful books of poetry. He wrote so many dramas, describing the realm of transcendental relationship with the Lord. Lord Chaitanya said, while you're here, excavate the holy places. And he and his associates, the other Goswamis, they did that. Lord Chaitanya wanted them to establish deity worship. And Rupa Goswami discovered the deity of Govindevji that had been made by Lord Krishna's great-grandson. What was his name? Bajranab. Just after the disappearance of Lord Krishna, Rupa Goswami, one day he was at one point in Vrindavan, it's called Govinda Stali. The local people said every day a cow is coming to some, cave and standing there and letting its milk flow into the cave. And Rupa Goswami went there and he went inside. He found the deity of Govinda and he established the worship of Govinda. And now that Govindevji, he resides in Jaipur. Yes, they just wrote books for our upliftment. And they preached and they developed the whole, philosophy and the theology of the Krishna consciousness movement. So Rupa Goswami is our Acharya. He's written also the Nectar of Instruction that you have just studied. And there, he says, the essence of all instruction in the matter of bhakti is that we remain nicely engaged in hearing and chanting about Krishna 24 hours a day. If we do that, then the mind and the senses, they will become controlled. And in that perfect state of devotional service, he says, and then one should follow in the footsteps of the eternal residents of Vrindavan and engage in devotional service to Krishna. So we're here by the grace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rupa Goswami, our predecessor acharyas, and Srila Prabhupada. Rupa Goswami has shown us the science of Krishna consciousness, and our duty now is to study this science very, very carefully, understand it, and then teach that science to others for the upliftment of human society. I think at this time with pandemic going on and economic crisis, we can see that human society at the present time is not a very ideal situation. And the only remedy for that is to awaken our Krishna consciousness. So these are a brief few words on Rupa Goswami. It's 9:05 over here. I think that I'm 5 minutes over our time. There are too many things to talk about, but too short time to speak it in. So maybe we can get together another time and we can speak more. But thank you all very much for participating tonight. Hare Krishna. And I understand that this broadcast is being broadcast in many different ways, and perhaps the devotees in Russia are hearing this broadcast also. Is that correct, Shiv? And since the devotees in Russia are hearing the broadcast tonight, I would like to wish one of my dear disciples happy birthday. And that disciple is Hari Manohar. She's one of my very first disciples. She's a wonderful, effulgent Vaishnavi. She lives in a city called Varanasi, and there she preaches, and she has developed a steadily growing team of wonderful Vaishnavas. So Hari Manohar, happy birthday. We wish you were here in Vrindavan, but at least we're happy that we have the opportunity to give you our good wishes on your birthday. Okay, everybody, thank you very much. And from Vrindavan, I'd like to say good night to you all. Hare Krishna. And I don't know if it's possible, but we were working on my altar today, so we shifted our deities over here. And if it's okay, we could try to move the camera closer so you could have darshan of the deities.
Hare Krishna
Questions?
Maharaj, could we have a few questions? Would you have the time?
Sure. Yeah, if it's...
All right.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, first of all, thank you very much, and please accept my most respectful obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, and let's get into the questions. We have a question from Ishita Sarkar. She has in fact sent in two questions. First is how to be humble towards the devotees. And the second part of her question is, how can we study the scriptures more effectively?
You know, how to be humble. Humility is more than just folding your hands and, smiling in a very coy way and perhaps not speaking your mind sometimes when you wish to speak your mind. Humility is based on a realization of Krishna as being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna being Vibhu, Krishna being great, and ourselves as being Anu, or very infinitesimal spiritual souls. We continually hear in Shastra about how very, very small the spiritual soul actually is. And it is only because now we're affected by these qualities of material nature, and we're affected by the false ego, that we think that we're something very, very great. But it's a realization which is based upon knowledge. And therefore, one should, and then I guess this would lead into the next question that she asked, how to study the scriptures more effectively. And that is always done in the society of Vaishnavas. Join a class. Here in the association of other devotees, take good guidance from realized devotees. Participate, read, participate, discuss, and then speak. Now, Srila Prabhupada would often say that what we read, if we will, read carefully, and if we will repeat that 3 times with attention, and that point will become our personal wealth. So study in the association of Vaishnavas, and do it on a regular basis. Study regularly. You have another question, Rasa?
Yes, thank you very much, Maharaj. The next question comes in from Su Lalita Devidasi Mataji. The question is, how to best make sure we are an absolute Rupanuga and not slightly diverting to something else. I heard different opinions among the Gaudiya society.
What was the final line of your question?
She says, how to best make sure we are an absolute Rupanuga and not slightly diverting to something else. She seems to have heard different opinions amongst the Gaudiya society.
You know, our point of reference is our founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada. And we base our understanding on the teachings that Srila Prabhupada has presented. I mentioned earlier in the class when Lord Chaitanya was traveling and teaching that sometimes Lord Chaitanya would just take an individual of this world and empower that individual to preach. And Srila Prabhupada is such an empowered individual by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So our point of reference is Srila Prabhupada. And then another aspect or another angle that we could look at that from is that Srila Prabhupada, in his humility, Srila Prabhupada said that he said, my particular point of reference is the instruction of my spiritual master. He said, I've always followed my spiritual master's instructions. I didn't add anything, nor did I subtract anything, but I just made the instructions of my spiritual master the goal of my life. So that should be our focus, the instructions of our spiritual master and the instruction of our founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada. And then we can understand the true meaning of being a Rupanuga and the true meaning of being a follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Our last question is from Brajajan Nand Das Prabhu. Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj. Thanks so much for the nice class. Please, if you can, touch upon a little on the mind of Lord Chaitanya that Srila Rupa Goswami understood in order to properly follow Rupa Goswami and become worthy to be called Rupanuga Vaishnava.
Rupa Goswami, he understood Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahayanya. He understood that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna, but that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had the mood of Sri Radha. I mentioned earlier that Lord Chaitanya appeared to present the Yuga Dharma, which is the chanting of the holy names. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that's what he did for us. You know, and we should have very resolute faith that by this chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, if we do this correctly, without committing offenses, we can attain the goal of life, the highest goal of life, which is loving Krishna. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's Krishna, but himself, he wanted to understand the exquisite feelings of love that Sri Radha and the ladies of Vrindavan have for him. So he appeared with this emotional mood of Sri Radha and then her golden complexion. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he taught us that if we wish to attain perfection, we should understand that we are the servant of the servant of the servant of the damsels of Vrindavan who serve Krishna in the glorious realm of Vrindavan. So this is Lord Chaitanya's internal mood. And Lord Chaitanya, he wants us, he wants us to actually develop our devotional service that we can start to understand the internal mood of bhakti. The beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita is stated, Anarpita Chirim Chirat Korunaya Vatirana Kala Samarapa Itam Unata Ujjvala Rasam Sabhakti Shriyam. It's explained that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he is the Karuna avatar of Krishna, and he came to present something that no incarnation of Krishna ever presented before, and that is the mood of divine love in Sri Vrindavan Dham. So this is what's going on in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mind. This is what Rupa Goswami understood. And we, as aspiring Rupanugas, we should try to, carefully study Prabhupada's books and understand that same mood of bhakti that's been presented by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and our acharyas.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. We have one more question. It's very interesting from Kara Khatib. But before I ask the question, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. It's C-A-R-A Khatib, Khatib. That's the name, Maharaj.
C-A-R-A.
Yeah. And then Khatib, Khatib.
Huh?
Chara Khatib.
Oh, Kara.
Yeah, Kara.
Hare Krishna, Kara. How are you?
From Lebanon. Yeah, okay.
Kifik.
Right. So I'm going to read his question, Maharaj. So he says, I'm convinced that God is the ultimate truth and that surrendering to him is the way. What then is stopping me from being a better gardener and watering the seed of devotion that has been planted in me?
We have to be attentive gardeners. It's just like here at my home in Vrindavan, I have a gardener, and his name is Sagar. And he's worked over here for the past 12 years now, I think. He's like a family member. He's like one of my children. And he takes care of our garden here so nicely. But what does it mean? It's not only that he's pouring the water on the plants, but also he's, pulling out weeds. He's chasing the monkeys, because over here in Vrindavan, we have so many monkeys who are ready to destroy things at any moment. Sagar is chasing monkeys. He's pulling weeds. He's cleaning. So we have to become attentive gardeners also. And when the creeper of devotion starts to grow naturally, it's like in your garden, you plant, a tomato, and so many other things are going to start to grow also because the seeds are in the earth. The desire for fame, the desire for, adoration, prestige. We may engage in some offensive type of behavior. So we should become very conscious of these things. When we start to see the sprout of that coming, we pull it out. Otherwise, weeds can just overtake the garden and choke out that creeper of devotion. And we should become very, very clear and very, very fixed in the how to say, the clear Siddhanta. And Siddhanta, it means conclusion. We should become very clear about the Siddhanta of the Vedic literatures. And if you study Bhagavad Gita, and if you study Srimad Bhagavatam, very nicely you can understand that God is absolute, but within that idea of being absolute, there are different conceptions. He has an impersonal conception. He has a localized conception as being within the heart as the Paramatma. But the Bhagavatam, the conclusion of the Bhagavatam is that the highest conception is that of the person, Krishna. And according to his instructions in Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktyamam abhijanati, I can only be known by bhakti. He says, I can't be known just by knowledge. I can't be known just by yoga. I can't be known just by performing karmic activities. I can be known by unalloyed devotion of the soul. And that's why in the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, now abandon everything else and give your heart and love to me. So we should be clear about the conclusion of the Siddhanta of devotional service. And that is, our goal is to love Krishna. And essentially, anything that's going to get in the way with that, we very nicely and intelligently remove that from our garden, so that creeper can grow all the way to the lotus feet of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan and grow around Krishna's lotus feet, and then flowers start to come, and then fruits start to come, and those fruits are the sweet fruits of love. But we should very, very nicely train ourselves in the proper Gaudiya, or the proper Vedic understanding. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. That Krishna is the essence of, or the fountainhead of all forms of Godhead, yes, and our goal is to surrender to him fully.
Thank you so very much, Maharaj. So we have finished with the questions, and the time comes to say good night, but with a request that we look forward to having you again, and we feel very blessed with your association, and particularly we see it as an encouragement for our initiative, the School of Vedic Studies, wherein we're trying to do exactly that you just told us to do: study the scriptures, study, Srila Prabhupada's books. So therefore, we look forward to many more sessions with you, Maharaj. And for this session, we are very grateful. We thank you. We are honored, privileged, and it's indeed a great fortune, Maharaj.
Thanks, Russell.
Thank you, Maharaj. And to all the attendees on Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom, stay connected with us. We will get back with many more sessions like these. And we have a YouTube channel. You could like, share, and subscribe the same. And on that note, I thank you. And I thank you on behalf of our co-directors, Jugal Kishore Prabhu and Tapan Prabhu, who unfortunately couldn't join us as he had some other commitment.
Hey, Rasa, would you like to see the deities?
Yes, Maharaj, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
well, that's we'll get Shiv Charan to start working on that.
Okay.
Thank you all very much for being here tonight. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And now we will show you the deities.
All right. So we can pay our respects to Maharaj. Vancha kalpaturu bhyascha kripa sindhu bhyayevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah.
Okay, let's move this up. Everybody hold on for a second.
Yes.
I don't know how we're going to do this, but we will do it.
Maharaj, can I ask you a question? There's a photograph below the altar. There's a picture there.
Yeah. Who is that?
Yes.
That's Mar Charbel.
Mm-hmm.
Charbel is the patron saint of Lebanon.
Oh, Jai.
And he is a Christian Maronite saint. And whenever we go to visit Lebanon, we go to visit Charbel.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So here, like I said, we were doing some work on the altar today. So we moved the deities over to this side.
Jai.
Here is Giriraj.
Jugal Prabhu, I can't see you. You also can have your camera. Jai Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai.
And you can all see that he's got beautiful flower garlands. And that brownish, beigeish type garland that he's got around his neck, that's from flowers from the tree that grows in front of my house. It's called a bakul tree or jamun tree. And here are Radha Govinda.
Jai Radha Govinda Ki Jai.
And here are Gornatai.
Jai Shishi Gaurnatai Ki Jai.
And here is Petit Pavan, Lord Jagannath.
Jai Jagannath.
And Panchatattva,
Jai Panchatattva Bhagwan Ki Jai.
Srila Prabhupada,
Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
and our Goswamis.
Jai Shri Goswami Ki Jai.
Because you were asking, there is Mar Charbel, Saint Charbel.
Jai. Jai.
All my friends who are watching tonight, I'd like to make a humble request. You all know that a few weeks ago in Beirut, they had that disastrous explosion that literally destroyed massive areas of downtown Beirut and left many thousands of people living on the streets. And our devotees in Lebanon are starting to go downtown. They're preparing hot meals, they're preparing sandwiches, and they're going down and they're just giving prasadam to people who are basically living on the streets now. So I spoke to Jugal Kishore and Kishori Mataji in Dubai, and I requested them, please contact our friends over there and see if anybody could share some donations for helping the Beirut, Bhakti Beirut, to distribute prasadam. So you all please connect with Jugal and Kishori, and if you all can contribute something, please let them know so that that can be sent across to Beirut. It's really such a horrible time. Pandemic is on, and hundreds and thousands of people are just without their homes now. So it's a very desperate situation. And for devotees in Russia who may be tuned in tonight, we should discuss and find out a way of how to coordinate donations also that can be sent so that Bhakti Beirut can engage in this noble service of prasadam distribution. Okay, Rasa.
Sure, Maharaj. Maharaj, I just wanted to bring to your kind attention, there is also Kuladipika Mataji, wife of Shamahari Prabhu. Since you know them so well, so I just wanted to let you know she's also in attendance.
Jai Jai Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she'll be happy.
Yeah.
Jugal Prabhu, you want to say something?
Yeah, also, Guru Maharaj, yeah, we have already got the account details from Premadan Prabhu. And one of the Matajis who is attending this program today, Manjuji, she has already transferred $500 to Premadan Prabhu. We are in the process of collecting some more, and we'll do the needful in the next 2 to 3 days, Guru Maharaj.
Yeah, please help, please help, please help.
Yeah.
We, devotees, they don't like to see people suffer. And we can help at this time by giving people Krishna Prasadam in their time of need.
Yes.
Okay, good night, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Good night, Maharaj. His Holiness Bhakti Bringer Govinda Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.